There is limited information on the ancient Nordic pantheon from the Merithic and early First eras. We do know that it was centered around the worship of animal gods, with the dragon being the most revered among them. The deities were separated into four categories: the dead gods, the fox, Shor, and the bear associated with Tsun; the hearth gods, the hawk, the wolf, the moth, the whale, and the owl, whom scholars connect to Cain, Morah, Dibella, Stendar, and Julianos respectively; the testing gods, the snake, or K, deemed to be a fusion of the Daedric prince Malakath and the divine Arche, whom some believed was not worshipped amiably but cautioned against, while others are of the opinion that he had his place among the rest of the animal gods as an equal. The other testing god was the Daedric prince Ysgramor, also known as the Woodland Man, the Atmoran demon of knowledge, and he was definitely a being that was to be treated wearily and was not object of reverence. Finally, we have the twilight gods, the dragons, and the one who carries this as one of his aliases, the World Eater himself, Alduin. Despite the relations uncovered between the divines and the animal deities, many are in consensus that there are subtle differences between the two. And while this topic is endlessly fascinating to me and many Braan bovitaan fellow adventurers, we shall turn our focus to another enigmatic figure the Atmorans purportedly brought from their frozen continent to Tazokan, Tamriel. I am speaking of the Hoar Father, whose wisdom is etched into the dark stones of select word walls we come across during our travels in Kaizal, Skyrim, as well as one hidden from us under ordinary circumstances. Drem Yol Lok, Zu'u, and welcome to my study in my home leaf rest in Riverwood, Skyrim. Here today we will turn our attention to the enigmatic Hoar Father, a highly regarded philosophical figure among the ancient Nords, and one I learned more of as I conducted my research on the walls of power scattered across Kaizali Norlok, Skyrim's landscape. Firstly, we shall ponder over the title this being carries and read all 9 stone structures, including one only found in the game files, sharing his sagacity, as well as touch on another mention of him. Afterwards, we will focus on the theories behind who he is. Is the Hoar Father simply a standalone concept, not to be mistaken with any gods or glorious heroes? Could he be the legendary Ysgramor? Is this another title associated with Shor, the fox, Jhunal, the owl, Tsun, the bear, or Stuhn, the whale? Or is he a concoction of all of them? Without further ado, let us focus on the inked pieces of parchment where I have documented my research. Before we turn our attention to the inscriptions carved into the word walls, let us analyze the title Fodis Borma, translated to Hoar Father in Tamrielic. The word Hoar stands for grey or white, describing one's appearance, and it is at times used as an indicator for age. It is also often equated to wisdom, not unlike the moniker Greybeard, which originated during the First Era when Jürgen Windcaller founded the Order of the Greybeards after meditating on the Nords lost during the Battle of Red Mountain for approximately 7 years. In the case of Fin Fodis Borma, while the usage of the word Hoar could refer to the figure's hypothetical physical appearance, it is safe to assume its emphasis is on sagacity as opposed to visage. As for father, this part of the moniker can, once more, be associated with insight and knowledge, as well as a more personal relation to the ones he is sharing his wisdom with, and namely, non-Vulbronne, noble Nords. Gods in both Tamrielic and Earthen religions are at times referred to as Bormahe Monache, fathers and mothers by their worshippers. Now that we have briefly analyzed the Hoar Father's name, let us focus on the wisdom he shares. As mentioned before, there are 9 word walls in total, one of which is found only in the game files, whose inscriptions mention this philosophical figure. Each is connected to a specific shout, as are all stone cairns, and the runes can spawn in one of 3 locations, one for each Rotmulag, word of power. I focus on this detail more closely during my research of these structures. Therefore, let us return to the topic at hand and see what the Hoar Father wishes to share with the Nords of old. Please note that the inscriptions I will read to you are in no particular order, as there is not one to begin with. Noble Nords, remember these words of the Hoar Father. It is duty of each man to live with courage and honor, lest he fade unremembered into darkness. Noble Nord, remember these words of the Hoar Father. A warrior fights his inner evils, but the king unleashes them on his enemies. Noble Nords, remember these words of the Hoar Father. The best weapon of Skyrim is the mind of a steel-souled warrior. Noble Nord, remember these words of the Hoar Father. Fear not the spectre of death, for he is the herald of glory and your guide to great Sovngarde. Noble Nords, remember these words of the Hoar Father. Even best steel may bend and break, but flesh of true men is unyielding. Noble Nords, remember these words of the Hoar Father. Pray not for peace, for such is the wish of the weak and cowardly. Noble Nords, remember these words of the Hoar Father. To kill in glorious war is to honor oneself. To die in glorious war is to honor all of Skyrim. Noble Nord, remember these words of the Hoar Father. Oblivion hath no fury like a shield maiden scorned. And the unseen 9th one, which can only be found within the game files. It is connected to a shout inaccessible to the player by normal means, for it is one only used by the Greybeards at the beginning of the Dragonborn's training, and namely, Phantom Form or Fik Losa. Many believe that it was meant to be available to the Dovahzul, for it is voiced for all races, but it was cut, likely due to time limitations.
Fik Losa! Fik Losa! Fik Losa! Fik Losa!
This would have been the 2nd wall of power connected to the Thu'um, the one that teaches the word Lok, which translates to deceive, and reads as follows. Noble Nords, remember these words of the Hoar Father. Deceive not your wife, for she is the oak in your shield and the steel in your sword. As we see here, the Hoar Father's sagacity aims to inspire honor and courage in the noble Nords, both on the battlefield and away from it. His wisdom captures this Atmoran philosophy, which continues to thrive during the 4th era, immaculately, and one can see how much Fin Fodi's Bogma has affected and continues to influence the Nords of Skyrim, albeit indirectly. As we travel across Tamriel during the Elder Scrolls arena, we may hear the Northern Barbarians, as the Chimer refer to them, exclaim, "By the Hoar Father," to express surprise or, as in my case, irritation. And before we move on to the theories available for us to explore, allow me to make mention of the hoarfrost root, a plant which we may be presented with under special circumstances as we set out to complete our mission given to us by Emperor Uriel Septim VII during the events of the Elder Scrolls II Daggerfall. It is famous for its healing properties, and we will be given the root to deliver to an ill person during the quest appropriately named the Healing. It can be acquired multiple times in certain temples scattered around the provinces of High Rock. One of the ailments it treats is lunar chills disease, which will be briefly referenced at a later time. Keeping all of this in mind, let us turn our attention to the speculations regarding the identity of the Hoar Father. Each and every one of them has merit and evidence to support it. Whichever is the truth is ultimately left to our personal interpretation and imagination. Let us begin. Morah now mindah. The first theory is that the Hoar Father is nobody in particular. He is a concept, a philosophical figure created by various experiences and wisdom shared among the ancient Nords and unified under the name of Fodis Borma. The Atmorans had rich oral traditions, and it is natural that once well-versed in written expression would put fin signal de Braan, the word on parchment, or in this case, the black stones of the word walls, in order to immortalize this sagacity. The piece of evidence to support this likely speculation is that none of the known deities worshipped by the Nords are ever directly referred to as the Hoar Father or described as being Hoar in any text and dialogue, even if some of them supposedly cover the criteria to have such a moniker. We will certainly turn our gazes to a historical figure as well as gods who would be strong candidates for the title. Nonetheless, it is important to note none of them carry this alias. Moreover, if we return to the Elder Scrolls arena, we may hear several other exclamations Nords may say, such as Frostfire, Mother of the Ice, by the White Wolf, etc., and none of them refer to any particular historical, mythological, or religious figures. Another possibility, which is way too short to be treated as a separate theory, is that the Hoar Father refers to an erased and forgotten dead deity of the ancient Nordic pantheon, whose influence diminished on the Jhunal, ice-covered continent before Ysgramor's conquest, and there is not much else to say in connection to this claim. And speaking of the legendary Atmoran, the next speculation I have seen floating about is that the Hoar Father is no other than Ysgramor himself, and just like the rest of the theories, it is a most plausible possibility. There are many legends surrounding him, aside from his well-known invasion of Skyrim, during which he was accompanied by his mythologized 500 companions, but none of them are our focus at present. We shall only touch on details about him that tie into our current discussion. Ysgramor is also known as Ysgramor, Ysgramor the Invader, and the Harbinger of us all. But there is another title he carries, the one most relevant to our current investigation, and namely, the Bringer of Words. Ysgramor was not only a Norokak Bozik Kendov, a fierce and bold warrior, but also a scholar in his own right. He is celebrated as the first human historian, for he was the foremost man to transcribe Northern speech using elven principles of writing. Furthermore, the Harbinger of us all lived during the time of the dragon cult, and much of the evidence of his life suggests he had a close connection to its members and leaders, and I will explain why I speak of this at all shortly. According to multiple sources, he was capable of using the Thu'um, and was known for, and I quote, shouting some sense into the Nords when they succumbed to fear after Shor was slain beneath Red Mountain, as is said in the 5 Songs of King Wolfheart, written by an unknown author. Some legends even speak of his breath weighing heavily with sounds of Suliek, power. Shouting was commonly reserved only for Fal Sonake Arknist Dovrache, the dragon priests and their dragon gods, which has led many to believe Ysgramor was a dragon priest, and one of a high rank too, with the title of dragon having been bestowed upon him within the cult. According to some myths, the invader was a literal Dova, with some even going so far as to separate the syllables of his name, Ysgramor, into words of power, which would interestingly enough be entirely true with slight adjustments. If one transforms Is into Is, it would become the word for ice in dragon speech. Gra, if we add a H, is a part of Dove's language and stands for battle. And if we were to place an O after the R in Mor, we would get Moro, or glory in Dovahzul. Therefore, Ysgramor would translate to Ice Battle Glory, and the name fits the harbinger of us all quite well, if I do say so myself. But perhaps this is all better saved for our research connected to the legendary Atmoran hero, if such comes to be in the future. Nu Amatib, let us return to the topic at hand. Some also give Ysgramor the name Ismalitax, which has no translation in Dovahzul but is meant to stand for the Northerly Dragon. Nonetheless, scholars are in consensus that if Ysgramor was involved with the dragon cult, he was a priest rather than an actual Dova himself. Unfortunately, even though I choose to believe the harbinger of us all was indeed closely connected to Dove during his lifetime, any records that may have ineffably proven this claim have been erased, like the rest of the detailed history of the dragon cult. Nonetheless, if we take all of this information into consideration, Ysgramor is a very strong candidate for being the elusive Hoar Father. He was the first human to apply elven principles of writing to Northern speech, was and continues to be revered and mythologized by the Nords, and was capable of using the Thu'um according not to one but various sources, which indicates some knowledge of Dovahzul and the connection, respect even, for the dragon cult. And this is why I spoke of his relation to Dovahzul. The walls of power, the only oath that make mention of Fin Fodi's Bogma, are etched with the magically charged dragon script. The combination of all of these particulars, including the fact that he is a legendary warrior among the rest, contributes to the speculation that he is the philosophical Hoar Father, and in this context, it makes even more sense that his sagacity would be immortalized in Dovahzul. Superficially speaking, Ysgramor is not exceptionally hoary in appearance, with his dirty blonde hair, but as said previously, this description must be treated metaphorically as opposed to literally. Let us now discuss another highly plausible speculation regarding the identity of Finfodi's Bogma, and thus. The Hoar Father is no other than the god and champion of men, also referred to as the children's god and the missing sibling of the divines, Shor himself. He is also known as Lorcan among the races of Mer and Shezar in the Cyrodiilic pantheon. Once more, I will not cite to you all that is known of the trickster god, which he is also sometimes referred to as, but only what can be considered relevant to our current investigation. Shor was slain by the elven giants, the Aldmeri pantheon in Red Mountain. His heart, considered to be the heart of the world, survived. Maser and Secunda, the moons, are sometimes referred to as Lorcan's corpse. The claim that the Dwemeri chief tonal architect Kagrenak crafted the blade keening of the sound of the shadow of the moons in order to manipulate the heart adds to this speculation, even if it is only ever mentioned within a song, similarly to the Kimel or the ball being a drop of Lorcan's blood which fell into an Ayleid well. I speak of the latter in detail during my research on how Mankar Cameron was able to wear the Amulet of Kings. But I digress. Shor took the side of humans after the creation of Mundus and is one of the chief deities of the ancient Nordic pantheon. He is often depicted as a warrior king with an unquenchable thirst for blood, who led the Atmorans in many battles against their Aldmeri foes. Shor is believed to be the husband of Kain and father of Stuhn and Tsun, with the latter thought to have died protecting Shor during the Battle of the Gods at Red Mountain. Sovngarde was created by him, and it is believed that the Hall of Valor is his and Tsun's temple, so to speak, and thus dead deities do not need sanctuaries, for they have the biggest one of all. He is strongly associated with the fox, often appearing in this form in ancient legends, including ones surrounding Ysgramor. Considering this dead deity's importance within the Atmoran pantheon, the myths surrounding him, and especially his depiction as a bloodthirsty warrior king, as well as the fact that he is the architect of Sovngarde and its Hall of Valor, it is little wonder that he can easily be associated with the enigmatic Hoar Father. The sagacity of Finnfodi's Bogma falls in line with Shor's nature and his patronage of men. As for the Dovahzul set wisdom is shared in, given the rule of the dragon cult during the Merithic era, it is to be expected that the Atmorans would choose their overlord's tongue to carve this knowledge in. Furthermore, while likely a stretch, the lunar chills disease can be cured by the hoar frost root, and if the moons are indeed Lorcan's corpse, then one could conclude the ailment was named after and has some connection to them. This is certainly a rather insignificant alleged piece of evidence, but you do know I would loathe not to mention a possible connection. I digress. While it is ultimately unknown what Shor would have looked like before he met his demise, due to being famous for taking on the form of a fox, many assume he would have had red hair. Although if he would take on the form of the snow fox, then his appearance would be hoary indeed. Nonetheless, his hypothetical physical appearance does not make him a less likely candidate to carry the title of the Hoar Father, with the next ones being his sons. Let us begin with Tsun, whom we meet in Sovngarde during our stories as Dovahzul in the 4th era. He is the god of trials against adversity, and is associated with the bear in the Atmoran pantheon. Tsun is often referred to as the greatest warrior who ever lived, and is known for being capable of using the Thu'um. At present, he guards the Hall of Valor, challenging every soul who wishes to proceed to its breathtaking interior to test his or her mettle in battle. Tsun also possesses great respect for magic, as expressed in his response to an archmage dragonborn who seeks entrance to the Hall of Valor.
Well met, mage of Skyrim. The Nords may have forgotten your forefathers' respect for the clever craft, but your comrades throng this hall. Here in Shor's house, we honor it still.
Much like the previous two possible Hoar Fathers of ours, he covers the criteria of this philosophical figure quite well. Tsun is a legendary warrior who is the god of trials against adversity and guards the Hall of Valor at Shor's behest, and is quite skilled at shouting. Furthermore, he deeply respects magic, for which Dove are renowned, due to being arcane in their very essence as lesser Adric beings, and whose tongue is in itself powerfully magically charged. Both of the latter statements explain the usage of Dovahzul to immortalize his wisdom, aside from it merely being an unspoken requirement during the Merithic era because of the dragon cult's influence. On the more ostensible note, Hoar is not how one could describe Tsun's appearance as we see him with our own eyes, although his rather inaccurate stone depiction does exude both age and wisdom. But as mentioned previously, one's visage, while an additional evidence, matters little. Now let us see how well his brother would fill in the Hoar Father's shoes. Stuhn is the god of ransom, fraternity, and justice, whose teachings are paired with those of Jhunal, whom we will focus on shortly. Like Tsun, he was a shield thane of Shor, and is often depicted as a whale in the Atmoran pantheon. He is known for teaching the Nords the importance of taking prisoners during war and how to do so. In modern Tamrielic religion, Stuhn is associated with Stendar, one of the 9 divines. We can neither confirm nor deny if he was gifted with a dragon voice like his brother, although the probability of him wielding the Thu'um is high, especially if him being represented by the whale is taken into consideration. Finocaron, the whale, is a mammal known for its mystical songs both in Tamriel and on Earth. The snow whales in particular were famous for their otherworldly singing, and there are even speculations from Braan bovitaan, fellow adventurers, that the Dwemer learned much of tonal architecture, the ability to manipulate sound to reshape reality, for which they were renowned by closely studying these magnificent creatures. But I digress. Utilizing the Thu'um while an additional evidence to support our theory regarding Stuhn being the Hoar Father would be an intriguing bonus, but not a necessity. Much like the previously discussed possible Hoar Fathers, this Nordic deity covers the criteria to carry this title, being a skilled and cunning warrior, god of fraternity and justice. Furthermore, his human form depiction could be considered Hoar, even if we need to accept his mural with a grain of salt due to the stark differences between Tsun's actual appearance and what he is presented as in the stones of temples. Stuhn's portrayal exudes both wisdom and age. He is yet another strong candidate for Fin Fodi's Borma. Now let us move on to the next and final Nordic deity who could possibly be behind this philosophical figure, and namely Jhunal, also known as Jhunal the Rune God and God of Runes, is the god of knowledge, wisdom, and hermetic orders. He is considered the Nordic father of language and mathematics and is represented by the owl, an animal associated with wisdom and knowledge. He is said to have a companion of this nature named Wisewing the Owl. As mentioned previously, his teachings are paired with those of Stuhn, whom we spoke of moments ago. Worship of Jhunal waned even during the times of the ancient Nords, but in spite of not remaining as revered as Shor, Kain, and naturally Alduin, many Atmorans took his lessons to heart and pursued more scholarly paths. Warriors also believed that Jhunal's knowledge and his insistence of strengthening the mind would aid them in battle. He is associated with the divine Julianos in the modern Tamrielic religion, with the claim that he literally became Julianos after falling out of the Nords' favor, compared to his fellow gods. His depiction, which we must be critical of as stated before, can also fit the description Hoar, with his magnificent beard and long hair. And if we treat the claim that Jhunal literally became Julianos as true, then the divine's depiction in the Elder Scrolls Tarot, in which he represents the fifth major arcana, the Hierophant, fits the description of Hoar perfectly, as does his imperial portrayal. So far, Jhunal is the only deity we have discussed who is directly referred to as Father in his title as Nordic Father of Language and Mathematics. Furthermore, he is god of runes, which are carved into the word walls in Dovahzul, is the deity of wisdom and knowledge, and is represented by the owl, an animal strongly associated with both of these virtues. One could say Jhunal fits the title of Hoar Father flawlessly, if not for the fact that his worship was already waning at the time during which these walls of power were erected, and due to not being directly related to battle, an aspect Fin Fodi's Bogma includes in his sagacity more often than not. However, it is established that, while not the most popular deity in the ancient Nordic pantheon, he still had worshippers who pursued the clever craft, so to speak, and those who applied his teachings to hardening fahdon, the mind during battle. And to conclude this investigation, allow me to make mention of one final brief theory which serves all an Fik Arkan Hakrim as a mirror and a frame to the one we opened this segment with. The Hoar Father is a philosophical entity combining all of the previously mentioned beings, from Ysgramor to Jhunal, all of their teachings, prowess, and wisdom. This makes Fin Fodi's Bogma an umbrella term, a name to honor each and every one of these revered Nordic deities and the legendary hero in the face of the harbinger of us all. As we have already discussed in length, each and every one of them fits this title in their own ways, and together they form an ideal philosophical figure who has and continues to deeply inspire the noble Nords of Skyrim. And with this, our research comes to an end. The Hoar Father is one of many enigmatic fragments that make the world of Nirn and its history, magic, and lore all the richer. As for his identity or lack thereof, this, much like many aught written within the Elder Scrolls, is ultimately left to our personal interpretation. And that brings me to the question, which of these theories do you deem to be the most plausible? Or perhaps you have your own to share. If you do, please do not hesitate to tell me. I always adore exchanging thoughts and knowledge with you, di fahdon. Akun slat kogan. Thank you all for your support, as always. I look forward to having you in my study again, but until then, Lok Thu'um. Drem Yol Lok, may your fire burn brightly, di fahdon.